So good evening, everyone. I hope this evening is good for you. Welcome to another Tech Talk with Andersen. Let's start with a kind of warming up. Which topic did you come to hear today? Yep. How often do you conduct interviews with stakeholders? Is it a part of your job, or you're just interested in the topic?
Well, practically every day.
Good. Can anyone share how does your typical interview look like in a couple of words? You can actually take the whole floor, but a couple of words will be enough. Is there any structure how you typically prepare for an interview and conduct it?
First of all, it is preparing. It is preparing with agenda. After that, it is interview, it is conducting interview, and also preparing documents, slides, and tables.
Good. So I will just repeat for everyone in case people on the background didn't heard. What's your name? Sorry. Alina has voiced that her typical preparation for an interview look like she makes some agenda, share it with the stakeholders, then conduct an interview, and made the follow-up. How many of you do use this practice with your clients? Do you heard what agenda is? How is it typically conducted? What is the follow-up? And that is essential? You did not heard, right? Okay. Then let me devote some part to this. Okay, I didn't start with an introduction and didn't introduce myself. So first things first, my name is Nadzeya. I'm working as a business analyst in Andersen. So my typical job is to communicate with the clients, elicitate the requirements that they have to the project, and communicate it to the team. So interviews is always a part of my job. On top of that, I'm participating in lots of internal activities, from pre-sales to mentoring of trainees. So interviews or communication with stakeholders, clients, whatever, is always a part of my job. That's why I'm here. And when I looked through participants who has registered on the meetup, I saw that among you there are lots of senior specialists, middle ones. So I hope that you're already familiar with such issues like follow-up in agenda, and wanted to share more specific cases which can occur on the interview. But as little people has raised your hand when I asked who of you use agenda and follow-up, and let me start with this kind of theory. So the basic business correspondence says that you should create some expectation for a client. So you should, in advance, explain what will be the topic of the interview, so that they do not feel stress when joining the session, but they know exactly what would be in the discussion and prepare some answers to the question. So no matter are you a business analyst, project manager, whoever, it's a polite way to inform a customer that kind of topics will be discussed today on the meeting. Once the interview has occurred, you asked all the questions that you prepared. It's also a common way to sum up everything and share it per email or per another way of communication you use to speak with the client. So you structurally collect all the decisions that have been made on the interview and share it with the client to make sure that first you got everything right, the customer can check whether everything is correct. And sometimes there are also following up issues that you can also wrap into this email so that remind the customer what will be next steps. This is kind of theoretical part. And now I would like to move to some specific questions or topics that may occur when conducting an interview. The topic of today's discussion sounds like the formula for a successful interview. So I'm going to share specific components that I would include in this formula. I would say that this is a common situations that may happen when you are interviewing. And the first component in my formula will sound like understand who you are talking with. Especially in the beginning of the project, it's a common situation that the clients set up the meeting themselves or share the list of participants who should join the meeting. So it's not you who decide who will be joining the meeting, but you have the list of participants. And one thing you should take into account is to investigate who are these people, what role do they take in the organization, what are they responsible for, and what is of their most interest. If you're dealing with the small companies, it's a common situation that one person is responsible for multiple functions. But in a huger companies, responsibilities between departments and specialists are always shared, and one person is only responsible for a specific direction or a specific process within organization. Not that long ago, friends of my parents has contacted me saying, hey, you work in IT, right? We have some question. Could you please do some IT consultation for us? I thought, well, there are lots of questions in IT. Most of them I'm not familiar with, but let's see what's the question is. And when they reached me out, they asked, so we have a website, and now we would like to start a targeted campaign in the Instagram. So could you please set up the marketing here? I said, well, that's not kind of job I'm doing. The same situation may happen when you ask the question the wrong person. When you're asking, for example, a marketing specialist some technical question, or vice versa. So clearly communicated agenda together with thoroughly investigated the list of participants who are going to join the meeting will save you from the situation when you ask the question and nobody is willing to ask because it's not of their interest and this is not what they want to talk about. We are moving to the second point, use appropriate language. It's always easy to talk to people who are on the same page with you, who know some basic IT terminology, understand some product development processes, know the value of each team member. There is no need to explain what you are doing, what for you are doing, but that's not always the case. In most of the situations, we are making our product for people in domains that are far away from IT, for example, healthcare, financial technologies also. So people does not know exactly how we are doing our job. And sometimes when we ask even simple question like, which features do you consider important for MVP, may get them stuck because MVP, the term MVP, we heard this term from the beginning, but the truth is that people not engaged in business or IT may not be familiar with this term, and the expression which features do you consider important, they just don't know how to approach this question because this is something far from their day-to-day job. My current project is a good example of this statement. I'm now working for a banking project. We're building application for loan management and application. And people who I'm dealing with from day to day does not know anything about the job I'm doing. So when I started my elicitation sessions, I thought, okay, we are having a couple of other projects running IT right now, so we can skip this introductory part. Let's get to the point. I thought, okay, that's awesome. You does not need to introduce all the questions that we have. But then it turned out that IT projects that they have are also different from our job. So it will never hurt if you explain in advance what is the agenda for the upcoming meetings, what would be the plan for the future ones, how you are doing your job, what for are you asking the questions, and so on. So to find the appropriate language, you need to be familiar with the domain. This statement is as easy to say as hard to crack, because it's always easy to say that you need to have some domain knowledge, but not that easy to gain this knowledge. You may probably recollect some situation where you applied for a job and the job description was slightly more advanced than your skills. And when on an interview, you tried to somehow show that you are worth this position. But if you then conducted somewhere interview, you see how easy it is to identify the person who really do not have experience in some sphere. Well, this may sound not that much motivating, but so the first probably step that you will take when starting working on some project, you will probably start with digging some literature to investigate some basic terminology, to uncover some terms that are used in this, how some processes go. That's good starting point. The next one that you can take is participate in pre-sale activities. Those of you who are working in IT, I believe this should be most of you, right?
Yes.
Okay. But anyway, let me, in a couple of words, explain what pre-sales activities are. This is a kind of step which appears before the project is initiated, before the client signs the contract with us. This is the step where the client comes to us with some request. We investigate how we can help them, what we can do for our client, if it's possible to implement in the time frame that the client wants, if we can fit into the budget, if we are enough skillful for this project, and so on. So this is a step when not only the client expect us to evaluate the project, but we are also to some extent evaluating the client to understand whether we are the fitting company or not. On this step, project managers are typically engaged into scoping questions to understand whether we have technological stack for it. They think how we can plan the budget and the roadmap for the activity. Technical specialists are engaged in technical questions, investigating if there is any integrations, if there is any services that should be used. And an analyst can investigate the domain. This is the perfect time when there is a chance for an analyst to investigate the client, their product, competitive product as well. In our company, it's an additional activity. So if you are an analyst working for a project and would like to take some pre-sale, it will be like over top for you. I know that in other companies, there is a dedicated team who work only for pre-sales. There is no other activities that they are doing. So in the second case, it's easier to dedicate some time to investigate the domain. When you have a full-time project, it's slightly harder, but believe me, it's worth it. You can gain massive experience in lots of aspects, including the domain. And of course, it will not fabricate you the real experience working on a project, but at least it will give you the high-level understanding of the product, of the processes, features that may be in this product, and so on. So we are moving to the fourth point, define interview goal. This may sound obvious, but in practice, it can easily be missed. Having prepared a list of questions is not enough to be a goal, because this means that whichever answer your stakeholder give, you will accept it. And it will look like you ask the question, the customer gave her answer, question and an answer. And then when the interview is over and you're going to process the results, you will realize that something is not implementable, something contradicts with each other, something is not fits into our, for example, timeline, and lots of questions may appear. So not to get stuck in this situation, you can define those goals. It's not always worth share these goals with the clients, but at least you need to shape it in your head. And when starting an interview, you need to realize, so for example, by the end of this interview, I would like to understand the scope of work, limitations that we have, some constraints or whatever. And when you ask the question, you realize, does it make you closer to your goal? Is it sufficient answer that you can take? Or you need to ask some more questions to understand exactly what you want. What's wrong? This is the fourth. Sorry. Oh, now I wanted to speak about the point number 6, and then we'll return back to the 5th one. I don't know what's wrong with presentation. So, as we are a part of the project, there is a lots of limitations that can occur in the process. It can be project constraints, some technological limitations, timeline, whatever. So again, when you ask the question and take whichever answer, this may lead to the circumstances that you will need even more discussion because you have reached one agreement on this first meeting, then you realize that it's not implementable, and you should go for another discussion, and this is like a circled situation. Of course, to explore the full range of limitations that exist, it takes really much time. As an analyst, I'm not always familiar with all the technical specifics, so I need to discuss with the team as well, with the developers, what do we have right now? Is it possible to do this and that option? With the project manager, with the product owner. So it really requires a lot of time. In some cases, I'm also missing this point because of the time. So if you just do not have enough time, we sometimes go and just ask. But I can give you an example of fuck up, which occurred on one of my projects. We worked on a product with a high security requirements. Personal data cannot be stored on our site, cannot be managed. We should not anyhow touch the data of our users. So we have selected identity provider, which will manage all these operations, which will store the content, the data, personal data, and do all kinds of operations. We agreed with the client so that we will use this provider. It will cost you this and that amount of money per month. And then we started developing this feature. Together with me, designer worked on the work of flows, made screenshots. We agreed everything with the customer. There was lots of features related to this to this scope. So personal data has been used when a user is logging, when the user is signing up, everything related to the password, from changing, resetting, whichever, multi-factor authentication. So there is a whole epic of activities that should be taken into account. We take it feature by feature, design, make their mockups. I made a description. We come to the client, discuss step by step, everything nice and beautiful. We worked 2 months together. We completed this epic. And then when the technical team comes, we realize that everything that we have designed is just not implementable. Identity provider that we are using has super strict restrictions on the flows They control everything. We cannot build the flow on our own. And the only thing that we can manage is a background picture. So it happened like, in these memes when expectation and reality. Expectation, it was our designs that we've prepared. They were nice. Everything was taken into account. And then we showed the real situation, which was absolutely not what we showed in the beginning. So this is just one example how we can miss the limitation and what can happen at the end. So we are getting to the point number 5, which I call it put yourself in the customer's shoes. And let me explain what I mean by this. Each of us has our own job, our own tasks, day-to-day responsibilities, and the client also has them. Especially when the client, okay, let's take again my project, my banking project. The people I'm dealing with from day to day are full with their head in some financial operations. They're managing their clients, providing some financial operations. And when we are coming on an interview, we sometimes forget that, let's say, the person is switching from another world. So they have their expectations, their ideas in mind. And it's difficult sometimes to switch to another perspective and ask some and answer some questions which are not related to their field. So one step, one advice that can be taken here is just realize what the person you're talking to is doing every day, how their job look like, and it will be easier to communicate whichever idea to this person because you understand from which perspective is this person talking. This piece of advice is even more relevant when the customer is your future user, the user of your future system. It's not always possible to have like a real demo session when the client, for example, have the old platform. You can see how they operate in the old system to build a new one. It's a perfect case, but not always it's possible to have. That's why one option that can be taken into account is just emulate in your mind how this person is doing their job, which features may be helpful for them, what additionally you would like to add in some feature, in some scope. And when coming on the interview, you can show it to the client so that you have investigated their domain and made some assumptions. For example, I think for you, it may be helpful to have this and that. The client will see that you are interested in the topic, that you are engaged in it, and will be more willing to share their thoughts, their ideas to the topic that you are discussing. I'm always forgetting that it's not my keyboard who is controlling the presentation. Okay, we're moving to the 7th point, which sounds like facilitate the decision-making process. If there is anyone of you who has studied journalistics, you may say that it's not professional to push a person towards some decision. That we should be separated from any party and take just the role of interviewer. That's true, but for a journalist. We are acting on behalf of the company, which has their interest, their limitations, their constraints, and in some cases, just not all possible options can be taken into account. There is type of client who know exactly what they want and how they want it. But there are also people who are uncertain about their decisions, who struggle to take responsibility to make the decision, who would like some time to discuss it internally. And this may lead to some prolongation of the project. It may take time until the decision will be made. And this all affects negatively on the project and the timeline that you are doing. So in such a case, you can speed up the process by delivering the possible options with their pros and cons. Especially if you are an analyst, the client expects you to analyze something, right? This is the perfect chance to show your analytical skills. Let's take something easy as an example. Each platform has their terms of use, kind of document which explains how the personal data is used, what for it can be used, cannot be used, and so on. So simply saying it's just a document. If it's some commercial website, it's going to be just a place where a user can see all of these issues. If it's more compliant platform, a client will probably need to accept this policy when registering on our platform, and then when the new version of this document arrives, a customer will need to acknowledge it every time. This is how, for example, in banking application it works and in other compliance systems. So this feature sounds pretty simple and usual for whichever platform. But in reality, there are lots of options how this can be implemented. Let's start with the content. Content can be just displayed on a page. It means that it requires some effort from designer to make it look beautiful, from the front-end developers who will make the layout and the page itself, for sure from backend QA, and some effort from analysts. There is another option, I would say cheaper option, how we can implement it. Just make this, form this content into one file and attach it as a file. So from perspective of team effort, it will only require some effort from the backend, which will manage this document. From the front-end side, it will be just a link which a user clicks, and the document is opened in the new tab. So this option requires no effort from designer, very little effort from the front-end, and that's why it's cheaper. But if we're speaking about, for example, acceptance, some clients may want a user to open the document, to scroll up to the top, to make sure that they have really read this content. So these kind of manipulations are impossible when we are speaking about the document. We can only control if a user has clicked and opened the document, and that's it. We cannot manage if they scrolled or whatever. So the second option seems cheaper, but has its limitations. Another aspect of this kind of feature is restriction. If we are saying that a user will need to acknowledge each new version, it means that if they did not acknowledge, they cannot access our platform because they do not accept the policy. This restriction can be made in several options. It can be just a front-end restriction, a kind of pop-up which disables the whole space, and the user cannot click anywhere until they accept the policy. Or this can be implemented as a backend restriction. This is more severe option, which means technically that another verification will be added to each endpoint, and this may cause some. This may lead to performance issues because the website may be downloaded slower. So if, again, thinking out loud behind the customer, explaining the options that we have with the consequences that it will lead, make the decision-making process of a client easier. Because if you just ask the question, would you like to store the content as a file or as a page? The customer will start thinking, so what's the difference? How it will affect me? But when you explain the pros and cons of each solution, the client will make the decision faster because they know if there is some circumstances that should be taken into account, or, for example, they have budget limitation and they would just choose the cheaper version and this will work for them. Okay, now it's in right order. This is gonna be mostly last point of my formula, which sound like show that the customer can rely on you. It's not about just saying that, hey, no worries, I know what I'm doing. You know this familiar joke that an expression "don't worry" didn't calm anyone. So the same with the communication, the same with the interviews. Showing that the customer can rely on you is about building trust. This is not the issue that can be done in a moment. It builds during the time and depends on how you communicate per email, how you answer in chats to your client, how you explain what you are doing, what for you are doing, helping the client to make decision, showing that you are also interested in making the product better. I recollected the situation when we come, for example, to some cosmetologist or whatever, with whichever procedure. A good specialist will always tell you what they are doing. They said that we are applying some mask, now we are doing some cleaning, and you feel relaxed because you know that the person knows what they are doing. You can just feel it and sleep for a while. The same can and should be applied to any communication, to any service, explaining what you are doing in details, providing the client future expectations. So what's going to be next? Another case that came to my mind when I was thinking about this point is you have probably run through some job assessment or school exam, whatever, and you feel stressed at that situation because you don't know which question going to be asked you, what should be required from you. And then when this part is over, you realize that you didn't make your best because of the stress, and now you could answer it better or know what should be in this situation. We sometimes think that we are the only one who is worried, but the client can actually also be stressed in case they are not familiar with the topic, in case they are in charge of some making decisions. Even for top management, it's a quite normal situation that they feel stressed because they're responsible for people, for decisions, for money, for whatever. That's why the more you prepare your client to what will be in the session, the more you explain and show your engagement, the more relaxed they will feel, and this will lead to more detailed answers and more detailed answers. So here is the whole formula. I didn't include such points as agenda creation, follow-upping, recording the meeting, though I consider them extremely important. They can save you from lots of situations when some decision is being questioned, or when some time pass, you cannot recollect something. But if you have, for example, a recording being made, you can anytime turn to it, re-listen it, and know what was the topic. So that's why the points that you can see now on the slide is like more specific situations that can occur on the interview, but agenda, follow-upping, and recording are undoubtedly top one of the whole interview structure. During our interview, I didn't look at the chat because I know that there are some participants joining us online. Okay, let's do the following. My prepared part is over. We're gonna have some time now for questions, for comments that if you have any experience and can question some of the statements that I made, you can do that very welcome. Before we jump into this part, I would like you to follow this QR code, which will lead you to the small application where you will find all our upcoming meetups. You can share which topic would you like to hear in the following meetups. Find the links to our Telegram channels. There are a couple of them, one for BA community, business analysts, for developers, QA community. I also know that they have their Telegram channel. So I will give you a couple of minutes, and then we can proceed with questions if they will be. And I will look through the chat of... Yeah, please.
I wonder how did the story about how you cut up and for your team?
Okay, I will repeat the question because we are having some people who join us online and probably they did not heard because the micro is on me. So the question was how we dealt with the situation when we fucked up and spent 2 months on the scope of work that we cannot implement. Well, we frankly explained it to the customer. We were lucky because right at that time, the customer comes up with a new requirement regarding all these flows, and we just accurately adopt our decision to this requirement. It was very in time. Typically, we do not like change requests because they make us to rethink our roadmap, our scoping, and so on. But this was a perfect change request which helped us to come over the situation purely and without black PR.
Just imagine how lucky you are.
Yes, how lucky we are and how lucky I am that it wasn't me who chose this provider because I don't know what will I be doing in this case.
And who participated
in choosing? Well,
if you know, so who was?
There was more technical guys which were responsible for the architecture and integrations that we have, compliance. So it was mostly their decision.
Can I
Please.
Yeah, you've mentioned the kind of things like consider limitations, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And during my practice, I faced some issues when you reached some empathy with your customer, with your client, or any stakeholder. And there are some situations when you have like limitation in 40 minutes of an interview, but it comes to these very questions, like, not really hobbies, weather-like, but like the event happened, did you hear, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And how to give any like clue to the customer that, well, we can discuss it, but maybe later. Yeah, like let's focus on the questions and agenda we have. So what to do in these very situations when the customer, or even if you understand that you are going out of the scope?
Good question. It happens very often, especially when you're working on big projects. It's typically not just like you start working and the 2 years without stop. Big projects are typically divided into phases, and the discussion is going to be about a specific phase. So, for example, let's imagine that we are having, just like me, we are in the beginning of our project. We're doing our phase 1, which has been estimated in 6 months. So the clients or the stakeholders which will be using our platform are thinking not in terms of the timelines that we have, in terms of phases that we have. They're thinking about their functions, what would they like to see in the functionality, how they would like to build the process, and sometimes they go far away from this small piece of functionality that we agreed to build in phase that we're doing right now. I believe that it's so just nicely saying that it's an important feature. We will take it into account. We have put them in the list of our future features, and we will come to it later on.
Okay, so thank you. One more question I have.
Please.
I'm just wondering about, sometimes we are collected everything that we need, like we identified the time frame that we have 40 minutes for the interview. We've collected some questions and etc. And what is your kind of a piece of advice of how much time should we take for a perfect interview, like when our brain is still active and can brainstorm ideas? What types of questions should we prepare, and how to manage and facilitate the interview for it in order not to go wrong?
Okay, so I will separate it into a couple of questions. Thank you. Let's start with the perfect time frame for an interview. I looked through the statistics, and it turned out that about 40 minutes each person can perceive the information, be actively engaged in the communication, and be present. In my practice, this can be a little bit extended up to an hour, and even in some cases, when the topic is interesting for your client, it may be even an hour and a half, if the topic is interesting, of course. But if we are speaking that we have a restricted time frame that we should fit, it's highly recommended to share agenda in advance and start with the following. So we have such a list of questions for today's discussion. We have only 40 minutes for it, so let's make it quick and productive. Let's start with the first question and go in such a pace so that you can control what is in the discussion right now. And when you feel that the customer is going somewhere else, start describing some other topics or just make assumptions. You can anytime, again, nicely stop them saying, okay, that's a nice topic, let's discuss it later. Now we have only 40 minutes, for example, left, and we have still the list of questions that we should ask. So let's discuss them first, and we will return back to your interesting topic.
How many questions is a good fit for an interview? Like 40 minutes a day, let's say.
I would say that questions are different. I like contextual questions. So, for example, again, if we are speaking about business analyst job, we typically take for requirements elicitation, let's say some feature, one or several ones. So all of the questions gonna be not just like fixed, or I don't know how to say. They would probably be related to the context. Let me give you some example to explain what I mean by it. Just a second. Okay. We are building some, I don't know, page with a list of some items. I don't know. Let it be some list of users. List of users which our customer will manage every day. So they may need, for example, some filters for this list, some search option, and whatever. One option, you can just state the question like, which filters do you consider to be important here? What would you like to be filtered upon? Another option is you can ask the customer to tell how they will deal with this list of users, with this list of items, what they will be doing. And the customer will start explaining what their job look like, what for are they opening this list, what are they searching for, and this will give you more context about the goal of what you are doing, and will help you to outline for yourself what is more important and what is less. So you can directly ask your customer, but in some cases, it's difficult for people to outline what is important, what is not, how to deal with it. So you can just ask about the job they're doing, what for they're doing, and you will see what they showed you at first, and maybe there is something they forgot about. It means that this is not used in their day-to-day work.
Necessary things. It's about necessary questions.
Yes, but well, if you are setting the interview, you would probably know, like you will have the list of questions that you must ask, and something, if you will have time, you can discuss optional. Yes. I didn't experience this situation when we have some list of questions prepared, and it was not me who initiated this list of questions. Probably, if you are conducting an interview, if you are in charge of this process, let's say, it will be you who control it, and you can manage how many questions will you take into this. Of course, at the first steps, it's difficult to estimate whether the answer to this question will take a minute or the 10 minutes. But the more interviews you conduct, the more you will feel it and be able to address. Yeah. In my latest session, I just recollected that at the first steps of my project, we were totally on different pages with the client. So when I start asking about some features, some process, they were just looking at me, and I saw that in their eyes there was like expression, "What do you want from us?" I prepared lots of questions, and they answered just with yes or no. If I suggested something, they may said, "Okay, makes sense, let's do that." If I didn't suggest anything, they're just looking to each other, thinking who will be answering the question. But now, when we finally found the common ground and we understand both the process, what we are discussing, how it will affect the future implementation, I'm taking 2 questions for 1 hour interview, and I know that the client will tell everything in all aspects. So back to the point, I don't know which was that point, the last one, I believe, about building the trust with the client, which will help you for you to be more open, and the client will be more open to you when answering your questions and communicating to you. Yep.
And back again to the trust atmosphere. My question is about small talk.
Mm-hmm.
You missed this part from the beginning, and
Yeah.
my question, is it really necessary, and what's relation between small talk and successful interview? How do you think, and what's your point?
Nice question. We used to say that small talk is a good practice in whichever interview or conversation you have. And that, I would say, is truth. Though I don't like small talks, because in some cases, yeah, it's really hard to find the right topic. I do not like to talk about the weather, especially now when I'm located in Minsk and all our clients are somewhere in Europe or America. My client know that I'm here, though their administration is not has not very good attitude to Russian-related countries and whatever. So when it comes to the weather, I'm just looking at the window and saying, well, the weather is good in my city, because it's not the topic that is convenient to me. One hint that I once heard, the possible topic for small talk can be, you can see on the background of the person you're talking to. Unfortunately, nowadays, we often have some picture on the background, some white font just, or blurred font background, which you cannot see. But still, there are like old-fashioned guys who are connecting to the interview and have their whole life happening on the background. So I believe this is the easiest and the nicest topics to start with, just asking what's going on behind you, or if you notice some interesting object on the background, you can ask, what's this, how it was. And then the more you communicate to the person, the more you learn about the person and get engaged with their life, so you can anytime ask about the future plans, and this can be the small talk for the future discussion. Yep.
How do you think, does it really influence on that trustful atmosphere? Because in my case, for example, small talk separately and other business talk is just moving forward to the deal. Let's talk like this. So it's very separately, and sometimes it looks very weird.
Agree. In some cases, it may look weird, though there are lots of people who like small talks and are eager to just talk about whichever, but not the job. So for somebody, it may work. I even can recollect the cases when it really helped me in the work. So what I mean is, not that. So recently, I needed to set up the meeting with a client. There was no meeting scheduled in the near future. So just one of our team meetings, I asked if there are any available time slots in the next couple of days. They looked at their calendar, said, well, let it be Friday morning. I'm working with an American client, so their morning is evening for us. We set it up, the meeting, for 8 a.m. And when we joined the session, there was a guy who joined the first. It was, let's say, an ordinary staff member. It wasn't somewhere from decision-making team. It was just a guy who helped to set up the meeting. And they said to me, like, by the secret, that there is a unofficial rule that they do not set up meetings on Friday morning because they are sleeping, then going to rugby, and please do not do that next time. So I feel like it may help. At least, again, going back to the building trust, the more you know the person, the more you are confident when you are pitching some idea or explaining something. So I do think they are helpful. Yep. Please.
When the client doesn't really understand what he wants from the product, but just understands the aim, it's better to offer some solutions from your side, or just let him describe how he can imagine this process.
Thank you. So I would start answering this question from a step back. There are two different situations, two different type of contract where we can work with a client. There is type of contract which we call time and material. It means that we just, let's say, give to the client some group of specialists which will work on the product. There is no specific deadline, there is no specific limitation, and it means that when a customer comes with a request on a new feature or to change something, we can easily implement it. And so the only limitations that we can take into account is the functionality that we have right now or some technical issues. But there is another situation, type of contract is called fixed price or fixed price. The second, no, time and material, and the second one, fixed price. But as far as I remember, there is another, but okay, let's stop on the fixed price. Fixed price means that the customer cannot exceed the budget. And having this type of contract, we usually start with outlining the scope of work we're going to do. And we cannot do even little more that has been agreed at the beginning, because this will affect it in extra cost, which the client will probably be not able to manage to pay for. So I would say that this obstacle is crucial when you When you have such a situation when the client is uncertain about their desires, if their budget and the timeline allows to have a lot of time on investigation, try this feature, then remake it into the other, so why not? But if there is a strict restriction, anyway, so if there is any limitations, this is what should be taken into account. Yeah, just following up, if there is no limitations, for sure you can suggest your investigation on the topic. You can show first your experience if you have dealt already with some situation and know from practice which solution will be better. But if we're speaking about some complementary features that can be in applications, in the platforms, you would probably need to do some research before start suggesting anything. So research in this situation helps a lot. Thanks. Is there anything else?
I have a question. So you mentioned that you recording an interview is a good option for us, for our development as specialists.
Mm-hmm.
Do you warn your customer when you are recording the interview?
Yep.
Why am I asking this? Because for me, I think I noticed that you are recording, and I don't want say or maybe answer something like stupid, maybe mess or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting me nervous.
Well, I see. No, I can totally get this point. I can realize that for clients, it's also kind of stressful when you say that you're going to record the meeting. Lots of questions can appear. So what will you do with this recording? How it can affect? But I would say that this only for first interviews. If you're going to communicate with the client on a regular basis, they will get used to from the second or third meeting. And so when I'm starting the recording, I'm always explaining to the customer that this is made so that we do not miss any point. If we forget something, we can anytime go back and re-listen it. And saying it, the customer feels a bit more comfortable because it's not like some secret purpose that we will use this recording, but we are just saying that we all are human, we can miss some point, we can forget something. It also may happen when you're having multiple interviews within the day. Your brain by the end of the day is just not working, and the best thing you can do is just read the questions that you have prepared and just listening to the answer. To me, it also happened. Architectural intelligence helps a lot in these situations. I once even I have no hesitation to introduce this to the client. So when we started some elicitation session, and there was a couple of them happening before, I was just totally out of strength. I don't know. I'm losing words, but I hope you understand me. So I have no ability to think, to ask some additional questions. I was just sitting. I used such an application which is called MeetGeek. It clearly recognizes every single word, whichever accent it is, and make a transcription of the meeting. So once I've conducted this session, I've just, it works like this. You insert a link to the meeting into this application. It joins just like a participant, a silent participant, and do whatever you want. It can make video recording, it can make audio transcript, it can even make you summary, but summary are worstest thing here. But the transcript is really helpful. So once I looked through this transcript, I realized that there was lots of points that I didn't even heard because I was so ustavший? Tired. cannot perceive the information. Yes. I believe nowadays it is used in lots of aspects, so it will not be even like it won't show you as a bad specialist. We use these technologies everywhere, so it will just speed up the process of follow-upping. It will, yes, totally. I agree, and I feel that even if some clients are less familiar with these technologies, when just explaining the value of it, the client will realize that they are saving their money, because you can watch the recording for a second time, make a notes, but you can just take the script that the system has given and use it. So it really simplifies the job. Thank you. Let me have a look if we have any questions in the chat. Well, we have a comment, which is, trust is built by the technical proficiency in the sphere. Nowadays, hard skills are the first things recruiters are looking at. Well, nothing is left just to agree. There is no other questions here. Is there any questions in the audience? You're asking how long can I work for one project? Well,
lifetime of product. You can afford for you and you can grow.
Okay, I see the question. Good question, but I'm not the right person to ask this question, because I'm working in Andersen for 3 years, and during this time I had about 9 or 10 projects. All of the projects I was included into was super short, 2 or 3 months, and now I'm engaged. This is my first project where I'm engaged as 6 months. Yeah, and another year is ahead. So when 1 year comes, you can ask me again, and I will say whether I'm tired with this project and would like to change it or not. But now I'm not struggling with the situation when I'm working for one project for the whole life and just know here everything, and it's not interesting to me. It's just not my case. But from my colleagues, I heard that year, 2 or 3 months sometimes get people tired. It depends on the complexity of the project. Typically, we have complex projects running constantly, so year by year. Much more often, we have clients like which come with a request on the product which can be built, let's say, in 6 months. So this is a one-time project which ends up and there is no other need to develop it. But if we're speaking about constantly ongoing project, for sure there is such a border when you say that you're tired and you would like to change it. Yep.
What do you like to do the most?
Well, I would say that to me, job is about the people. And this is number one, whatever I'm doing. Previously, I worked not only as business analyst, but in the other spheres. And I realized that if you are dealing with a nice people that you can rely on, this is like the first issue that personally I'm taking into account. The second one is, I would say, an interesting product. If we're speaking about IT projects, they are different. They can come from different domains with the different timelines. And the project I'm working on right now is the perfect match because I have economic education. And when I started working here in Andersen, they say, okay, you have economic education, you're going to work for fintech projects. But actually, the project I'm working on right now is the first one fintech project I worked. So now I feel like I have already some understanding of the domain. There is no need for me to investigate what's going on here. I know some basic terminologies, though it's different for America, Europe, and Russian for sure. But anyway, it helps a lot when working. So to me, this would be the two major, but I believe this is not like the standard formula, which is the same for everyone. Is there anything else?
I guess ask the questions we can just discuss on our cuisine. I would say like this.
Oh, okay.
This just would be like informal chat, like we do with pizza and so on. So.
Awesome. So as a finishing part of our meetup, pizza is waiting for you in the kitchen. So feel free to go there and enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.